Hi, I'm Lou Green. Welcome to America's Crossroads. Welcome to America's Crossroads. I'm Lou Green. Tonight is the final show of our series as we head for our winter break, but we'll be back in the spring, so keep your antenna up and you'll be notified when we're back either from TBCN or through our website, americascrossroads.tv. And some of you, we do have your email address, so watch out. Tonight we're headed for Queens, New York, to meet Art Shifrin, who is an audio archaeologist. What is that? We're going to find out. Hey, America's Crossroads comes to Queens, and I'm with Art Shifrin, who is an expert restorer of lost sound. And I'm talking about getting sound out of things that nobody imagined could be recovered, like old records, wire recording, tape, things like that. Talk to me, Art. What do you do?
Hi, Lou.
Good to see you, Art.
Thank you. And I have a studio here, part of which you see right now. And I've done work for archives, museums, private collections, and so forth. Some forensic work involving surreptitiously made recordings, legally done.
Yes.
Where people have said things that got them off the hook or got them on the hook. You know, this is really excellent timing. I just came back from checking Humphrey Bogart filmography. You'd say to yourself, what the hell are you, where am I going with this?
Yeah.
Well, just a couple of nights ago on TCM, they were showing a Bogart film in which he plays a kind of troubled screenwriter who's not having the best time in his career. And he winds up being understandably, justifiably, but unfairly suspected of having killed a very pretty young woman. And in this scene where he's being interrogated by the cops, maybe it was Frank Lovejoy, who's in the film, but they're interrogating him, and Bogey says to the cop, he says, are you recording this on wire or tape? Now, this is a film that was made in 1950. I think it's called In a Lonely Place. And I was sitting there saying to myself, now how many people watching this film would even catch that line and realize why the question was asked?
Yeah.
And that is because 1950, at least for consumers, non-professional recorders of sound, there was a, to use a sound term, a segue, a transition happening in the audio business. Because right after World War II, because of various historical circumstances, recording magnetically became in vogue in the United States. It had been pretty widespread in Europe, and in fact it was even invented back in Denmark in the 1890s, but it was in increasing use throughout Europe, but it never really hit the United States until after the war, when we came back with some technology that we discovered in use over there. Well, it turned out that there were two rather efficient ways to record using magnetic fields, magnetic signals. One being on wire, not tape. What most people who remember tape at all might recognize this stuff is that here's a cassette which contains a little tape in it that's 1/8 of an inch wide. Here's an open reel tape that was pretty commonplace even by 1950, tape that's 1/4 of an inch wide. And there was a kind of a battle going on between the two media, and wire inevitably lost the battle. And it lost the battle for some very good practical reasons. The wire was easily broken, it was easily tangled, it was typically only about the diameter of a human hair, you know, that stuff we used to have much of on our heads. So that at that time there was still a pretty good established base of wire recorders that were already in use. They had become available around 1946. Companies like Webcor, Webster Chicago, which became known as Webcor, Other companies, you could buy with these wire machines in a Sears. They had their own brands that were made for them by other manufacturers and so forth. And because I'm a proud alumnus of a once great company, Ampex. And Ampex was a company that, for example, developed the very first truly practical videotape recorder, which they sprung on the broadcasting business in April 1956. But before that, they were involved in magnetic recording, and they got into it the easy way. They simply reverse engineered, which is a polite way of saying they stole the design of the German magnetophone, which was a real tape recorder that was in use widespread throughout Germany in the 40s and even before the war in the 30s. And it was a commercially made product that was introduced in 1935. And even that far back then, they realized that there were some good arguments for not recording on wire but on tape.
So do you have examples of this wire and,
Yes.
and the quality
Yes.
therein?
And when you bring up the subject of quality, people could leap to a certain assumption that there is a fixed inherent quality to any medium. And we learned quite some time ago that, for example, recordings that were cylinders or discs that were made through horns could be made to sound much better if they were not played back in the reciprocal way. And I do realize that there are some people who feel that that's the only right way to play them, and that's their philosophy, and that's okay if that's what makes them happy. Fine. The same thing with early electronic or pre-electronic audio recorders. The first wire recorder that was invented, actually made practical by an inventor named Vladimir Poulsen in Denmark in the 1890s, came up with recording an actual signal off of the part of a telephone handset, recorded to a magnetic head, and it recorded on wire. And there is surviving a recording of Emperor Franz Joseph very briefly talking about this miraculous technical accomplishment at some trade fair, recorded around 1900.
Sendung hat mich sehr interessiert und ich danke sehr für die Vorstellung derselben.
The machine was called a telegraphone. We have here an actual Webcore wire machine from the 1940s, and what we're going to show is the machine playing this kind of a wire. This is a spool of wire, that 3/1000 of an inch diameter stuff. It's made out of stainless steel, and it is about 1.5 miles long.
Let's hear what it sounds like.
Sure. Because the wire is rippled, it is not having consistent contact on the face of the head. And that's what makes those tinkly sounds. So when you take that same wire and you play it here under the constant tension of the improved system with the servo capstan motor, you basically are straightening out the wire in a kind of real-time chiropractic adjustment, as if you were on the table and you were being straightened out and bent and pummeled by a good chiropractor. That's what the machine is doing to the wire. So when you take the audio that has the corruptions that were on the wire as played back on the original machine, you would have to do extremely time-consuming filtering to try to get out that noise. And that noise would never be completely removed. It is impossible to do, even with the most sophisticated digital processing. At least it is impossible in my opinion. So having the opportunity to pick these guys' great brains, and I was privileged to pay them for those services, of course, as subcontractors, we came up with this design. And what happens then is that the wire plays from the supply spool, just as it's doing here, and it goes around this guide, and it goes under this guide. Here is the head that takes the magnetic field and turns it into an electrical impulse, and it goes through this array of systems, and it winds up being taken up back on this spool. The electronics that we are using to play it back are a wonderful old high quality ICO vacuum tube preamp. And the preamp in this particular case is patched into my speaker system, which is being picked up by the mic that's on the camera. So when I hit play, the wire starts playing. Now, the significance of the difference in the quality between the wire being played back on this machine and what you hear on the same.
So basically, it's sound archaeology 101.
That's an excellent. That's an excellent analogy.
Yeah,
It really is.
you-
I like to think of it, and I have some moderate interest in the latter Egyptian dynasties. But sure, it's unwrapping a mummy from the 17th or 18th dynasty and not knowing what the hell
And
you're gonna
finding out
find
he
in
had
there.
earphones on.
Earphones, or tubes from an Edison cylinder machine,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that.
Anyway, thank you very much, Art,
Thank you for
It's
this
my
opportunity.
pleasure.
Thank you, Lou.
to have this class in audio restoration.
One part of it, anyway.
Yeah, it's first class.
And then we'll
The
get
more
to
classes
get to doing some discs at another time.
Then we can get into some detail.
Yes, that would be groovy.
Thank you, Art.
And now you know why Bogey asked, is this being recorded on wire or tape?